I feel like we need to be clear, and this is what I said, right? We need to be going back to what race is, okay? And I think you have to start from that in order to understand all of the impacts, its varied impacts. And I feel like you're leaving out a fundamental impact of it that I think has bearing on this conversation. And what that impact is that people who are racialized differently have drastically different life experiences in the same environment. That's what it is. That is what one of the biggest consequences of the implementation of a racial hierarchy has had on humanity. And so a lot of people are unaware of that. They imagine that people are living the same kind of life that they're living, because we're very egocentric. And a lot of people can only think about things as if they're the only people who exist. But as it turns out, a racial hierarchy being imposed on all of us has created drastically different life experiences in the exact same environment for people. And therefore, it's partitioned us at a fundamental level of existence. And that's what's going on here.
I get the context that you're speaking to, and I realize that you're right. We do need to define this a little bit better because I am not speaking to that context. What I am talking more to is that if you took two dead bodies of different races and you compared those two things together, as so many scientists and biological observers had, the fundamental differences between them are actually not much. It's not like black
No,
people and
I
white people
understood.
have
I
different sets of
understood. Yeah, you were
organs.
very clear about
Right?
that part. Yeah, you were very clear.
So when I'm speaking about the difference in like a melanin content as a way to like differentiate like human beings, what I mean is that as we had run into this difficulty before, I'm doing this in consideration of all time. I'm not doing it in consideration of just what you had said, which is that people have a really hard time with egocentrism. They think this time is the important time. They think now's problems are the only ones that matter. They think now's problems are unique. And they don't read up on it, what people did within history to design bridges of moments to the places that would better serve us together. So everybody keeps trying to reinvent the wheel of race, and the reality is that it is forged in the moments that we decide to repeat together in order to survive better. I guess the reason I'm bringing that up is because I think it's really important that people hear a white guy say that nothing about his identity is worth anything in terms of the people who do hold that up as important. If I'm the smartest white man in the entire world, if I'm the Ubermensch, if I could run faster than anyone, swim harder than anyone, more endurance, more intelligence, more humor, more compassion, more empathy, if I am the capable thing they wished to produce that would be their whatever, their quintessence. If it's me and it's in the modern era, I'm going to say that I would actually leave all of them behind if it came to it, because none of that has any value. None of the things that they assigned value have value unless you are a slave to capitalism. Being
Which
white
most, which
doesn't have
most,
intrinsic
which most
value.
people are, right? So like we should
I
at least,
Yeah, yeah,
I think that's kind of like what I'm getting at is that like in order to figure out what we can do, right, and what we need to do, we have to acknowledge our current existence and our current reality. Our current reality is bleak. Like,
yeah.
there are a lot of people who are, in fact, slaves to capitalism, and that's how they live their lives. And in fact, if you ask many of these people, they will even explicitly tell you, as I have done many times in the past, they will explicitly tell you that they're only alive. One quote that stays with me to this day is the guy said, I only wake up in the morning to try to make as much money as possible.
Yeah.
And that is, and with pure genuineness. So there's a lot of people out there like that, and so it's a
Yeah.
huge barrier. But like, I also don't want us to. I don't want you to separate what I was saying about racism's consequences in this conversation, because I
Oh,
don't
I think I
think.
think I actually have a place to go with it that you'll
Okay,
find incredibly
go
valuable.
ahead.
And I think what capitalism has done is it has gutted culture and replaced it with a sort of Ziploc bag of condiments that people add to their dying. Uh, Adnan's here in the comment section. Whiteness isn't real. 100% agree. It's the most ridiculous thing in the entire world. American whiteness is built upon Puritans who didn't want to have any fun, then stole an annual tradition of harvest celebration from Native Americans, then built that into an empire that would go on to simultaneously flood its capitalist entities with cheap labor by accepting as many foreigners who didn't want to be there anymore, and shoved them all together and told them that they were allowed to hang out together as long as they didn't make any one of their cultures overrun the puritanical shit that came here in the first place. Yeah, it's more like the absence of a thing is whiteness. The absence of a culture is whiteness. Whiteness in America is being a vacuum because you lack so much agency that you can't create anything on your own. And I think that's probably the thing that stung me so much as I drifted away from my family, because I wanted to celebrate holidays. I wanted to do things together. But you're talking about different racial experiences, and I'm trying desperately to sound the call that the way we fix it all is by uniting. And I'm not saying that because I'm actually the one with the least amount of culture to offer everybody else. It's specifically because that's how we get rid of the prejudice. We find ways to celebrate our diversity. We find ways to utilize it based on those fundamental characteristics that exist as just small factors, not large ones. So your racial identity, how you would have experienced race in America and how your culture would have developed differently from mine, as you pointed out, would have a lot to do with
Hang on,
the
though. Hang
hatred.
on. That's not what I was pointing out. I wasn't pointing out about a difference in culture. I said a difference in life experience.
Sure, sure. You'll forgive me. I was sort of wrapping that into the same thing, trying to be
But it's it's
uh
it's it's a culture is a
wow.
subset of what I'm talking about. So like, I think it's important that I correct that, because I'm talking about a much bigger universe when I say life experience than culture. You know, I'm talking about like a situation where a racialized white person cannot even imagine what might happen if they were a racialized black person in the same environment. That it's
Yeah,
beyond the scope of racialized white people's imagination, the life that we live.
yeah.
Black people are not situated in that same way. So,
I disagree with you on that.
well,
I
you can
disagree with you on
disagree,
that
but it's
because,
still true. Like,
well, not in its entirety though. What we're seeing with the convalescence of 350 million Americans is that there are some, and I want to point that out
there are
because
some what?
there are some black people who have that same experience as white people. There are some white people who have that same experiences as black people, but we're not talking about the same numbers here. Whites unilaterally have it better. they
It's
they have built the system for themselves that way. But what I'm getting at is, like, you take the Hebrew Israelites, right? And they feel the exact same lack of agency. Like if I could point back to the incels forums are made up of like just about equal parts of black and white people. There are a ton of black incels out there, and they complain about the exact same stuff. And the funny thing, I mean, like, it's not even funny, but like the racism that they show each other is astonishing, because it still hurts black culture. It still hurts black people, and there's black people predicating it. And that's the reason all these white incels allow the black incels to exist in that space with them, because those black incels are racist against black people.
Yeah, bro, but that
Look,
dynamic has existed since race existed. So like, like it's just existing now in a digital space, but that dynamic, right, is just part of the raw mechanics of white supremacy. There's a whole universe of it, and we could talk
yeah,
about all of it. But like, it's always happened that way. There's always been racialized black people who were supporting white supremacy ever since there was an option for them to get a leg up over other black people and have a better life than other black people and feel superior to other black people. I was just
yeah,
talking to a woman, a racialized black woman, on the show last week or this past week. And she said that she grew up around racialized white men, and primarily, and that she was made to believe that she was an exception. She knew she was racialized black, but she was made to believe that she was an exception because she was doing the things that winners do, and all those other black people were losers. And so she
yep,
was made to otherize black people in that way. And it took like a physical moment, racial incident not even a racial incident, but just her experiencing life as a racialized black woman and realizing that having one of those experiences where she couldn't even imagine herself in that experience, just like I said. So I wasn't trying
yeah,
to distinguish black people because I just talked to her about this, but like, I was
yeah,
trying to say that, like, yeah, she was in that mental space where she couldn't imagine herself experiencing racism and it having a substantial impact. For her, it was the impact part. She could
yeah.
see in that
I
moment.
can see that's a really good example. That's a really good example, and I think I'm trying to agree with you on this, but I'm trying to make sure that we consider those people, that we don't paint with such a broad brush